one day, less than a day, maybe 15 hours, and undergo no suffering to get there. All I have to do is find the money for a ticket, and the next day, they're in London, Paris, New York, Sydney, or some other place. Well, in the old days, if you were going to go to London, Paris, Sydney, or some other place, it would take you like 4 months. And all the associated difficulties of how to get there. So the jet plane, to my mind, is the dividing line between the world we face now and the world as it used to be. All the things we're facing now, of course, it is symbolic that what was used to destroy buildings in New York. Jet planes full of fuel. It's not without the symbolism. I don't want to overdo it, but a lot of people don't think like that, like this. I'm just trying to make this point so you see something that I've been able to garner from my own experience. So it is a kind of dividing line where the whole world that one is dealing with today is different from the one yesterday. And in particular, what the modern world has done and availed other people to do is to use the techniques and technology of the modern world against it. So, for instance, now it is possible to take all these things, like the jet plane, and reverse them. And without any sophistication, turn it into something entirely. Don't go down the middle here because we have a camera that isn't tied down. Just take a seat over in that way. Now we have a situation where people can use the modern technologies against the modern world. So there are people who are interested in the medieval world, classical world, say, okay, we don't like the modern world. Let's tear it down. How do we tear it down? Oh, by using its benefits, its structure, its technology against it. So all the people now, and Clara, don't move down the middle here because we've got this unanchored. He'll pass them around. So we have this situation where people can use the technologies of the modern world against it. Cell phones. How are they? Don't go near that. It's not anchored out. It's not anchored. I already knocked it down once. So people can use, we have the technologies, cell phones. How come all these groups can communicate with each other? Just go out that way, Howie. Don't go past this thing here. So people can use cell phones, low-level delivery systems like we saw, and even nuclear and biological things that are the products of the modern world to tear the modern world down. I don't have the answer for that. I just wanted to show you how much the world has changed. It's something to do with what we're going to do in this class. What's your point? What was the question? Huh?
I needed a sheet.
Oh, well, he'll pass you one. He needs a sheet. Pass it over. Thanks a lot, Al. God, we're sheetless in this class. We didn't ever have so many. Okay, so that was just by way of saying how changed the world has become in 30 years. And why everyone is facing a totally new situation, and that why the parameters are so different. So a person interested in a classical period can in fact use the modern period, and I'm sure that's what is being taught by many of these people who are interested in doing this, against it. So you master the technologies of the modern world, and then you employ the technologies. You avoid the FBI, you avoid the CIA, you avoid the French specials, you avoid MI-15 or 16 or whatever it is, by being so clever that you're 10 steps ahead of them in your electronic communications with each other. And then when a situation needs to be disturbed or overturned or changed, you have the volunteers that we have seen who are committed to a certain ideological view of the culture from which they come to sacrifice themselves in order, but they bring modern technologies with them in their sacrifice. Okay, having said all that, I personally think that's illegitimate. Not what they're doing or their motive or anything like that. But to use the technology of another society against that society, which you've benefited from yourself, I personally feel that's dishonorable. Now, you can think whatever you want, but I feel that if you are going to participate in the modern world, if you're going to use the modern world, if you're going to look at videos, if you're going to watch, whatever you watch on videos or on, new Sunny iPods or what do you call it, not Sunny, Mac iPods or things like that, then you have an obligation to the modern world that has given you these benefits. And that's my only beef with these kind of people who don't appreciate the modern world. I know where my benefits come from. I know where my heating comes from, my air conditioning. I know where my ability to get from one country to the next comes from. I know the inventions that brought it into being. I know that those very people who are involved in things we're talking about are not interested in riding around on donkeys for the rest of their life. And therefore, my honest feeling is that's the only dishonorable thing that I personally resent about that whole thing. Not to appreciate the benefits of the modern world for all peoples. I'm talking about Japanese, Chinese, Southeast Asian, look, Kuwait, the Gulf states, even Riyadh if you're against the government. They run on modern technology. What are you going to do, tear it down and not have air conditioning there? I don't think you are. I don't think you are. You want the air conditioning. Everybody wants the desalinization and so on and so forth. So that to me, that's the only dishonorable thing. Like one last word about that, and it's not to be positive or negative. To my mind, I'm sure bin Laden came from a very upper class family. Extremely wealthy, privileged family in the Saudi scheme of things. I have no doubt that he watched videos when he was young. And I have no doubt that he watched a lot of James Bond. Because there's so many of the ideas that we see floating around that come right out of James Bond scenarios that I can't even imagine that some of the people involved in that kind of undertaking or thinking about the world weren't brought up on a James Bond universe. Now, I personally consider the James Bond universe one of the most vulgar universes in existence. I hated James Bond movies. I never watched them. They were made totally disgusting, but I could just see some of these guys as teens, 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds, in the world in which they're happening, watching James Bond movies and ideas having percolated from that. I know